Welcome to the Butt Fixer Podcast, brought to you by Shane Gentry and John Van Olden. Sit back, listen up, and listen good. You're going to hear it all right because we've already done it all wrong. We're going to help you meet your goals and fix your butts. Welcome to the Butt Fixer Podcast.
Take off.
All right. I got to make sure I don't hit the table.
Yeah,
all right.
right.
So this is number 18, I think. It's Dave Tabler, who is actually a family member of mine. And he has been now you're almost semi-retired because you're putting a lot of work into the books, right? But
writing a book is the opposite of being retired.
Yeah, for sure. So Dave is in his let's call it the second career as an author, and he's written 3 and working on number 4. Is that right, Dave?
Correct. Yeah, you got the count.
So I'm gonna let Dave take it from how he got from I know Brooklyn, New York, Maryland originally, and here he sits, author of 3 award-winning books and 1 in the works. So, Dave, tell us, how'd you get here? How did you end up? Let's hear it.
So my wife's family is from Delaware, and when we were looking to get out of Brooklyn, because Brooklyn is no place to retire if you're Brooklyn is no place to retire unless you're very wealthy.
Right.
Otherwise, you have to deal with subway steps up and down, and it's stressful. So we were looking around at options, and she's like, I have family in Delaware. I'm going to retire there. We'd been coming to Delaware for years and years, so we kind of knew what the lay of the land was here. But it's very interesting when I talked to friends of mine in New York City, and they were like, Delaware, that's, and they kind of stopped. They didn't have like a really clear picture.
God, and that's New York. It's only 2 hours away, 3 hours away.
Yep.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah.
It's interesting. I've talked to a lot of podcasters on the West Coast, and they are fascinated by Delaware because you might as well be talking about Singapore. It's just this faraway, exotic place to them. And,
I've been there. It's not that exotic.
Yeah.
That's the thing, I mean, we have Walmart and we have McDonald's.
Oh, good Lord.
Yeah.
We're on the upswing.
Yeah.
But I think Delaware was once exotic prior to all the bridges and tunnels being built here. And, we forget that most of those bridges, like the Chesapeake Bay Bridge, they all went in the early 50s. So really, that's not that long ago. I mean, the generation before mine still had quirky Delaware mannerisms that you just wouldn't find anywhere else. I think today Delawareans are pretty much like Americans everywhere. We're plugged in. Well, no, hear me out. We're plugged into the internet. We have access off and on the island. We're not stuck here.
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah, I mean, I think anywhere you go, there are always going to be townies. The people that are kind of like, yeah, this is my place, and I don't give a shit about the rest of the world.
And I don't answer, and I don't have email or any of those newfangled things like that.
You're going to find. I found that in Brooklyn. In fact, the people that we lived next door to in Brooklyn, it was an older Italian couple, and they said, "Oh, we never go into the city," meaning Manhattan, because they had the church on the corner, the grocery store on the other corner, the school a couple of blocks away, and they worked in the neighborhood. So to them, Manhattan might as well have been Mars.
Yeah.
You know.
So we can talk all the shit we want about these folks because they'll never see or hear this podcast anyway. Right?
Well, we hope they do.
Yeah.
We're going to make you Delaware famous. Don't worry.
Yeah, for sure. Well, he is Delaware famous now. That's the thing. So how did you, because you went to, we have been family members now for 13 years, 14 years. Yeah. And, I know you went to college in Maryland, and I know that you lived in New York, and I know that you were working as an art broker, which is still a gig that I try to get my head wrapped around of how that all worked. So can you go from at least from Maryland to here you are, Delaware, writing books, and then we'll get into how you wrote, what made you start on the books.
So how'd I get from Maryland to New York?
Yeah. How did you what'd you do out of college? What was your major in college?
Yeah, so I studied photojournalism in college.
Okay.
After college, I fell right into a project that was a really sweet deal. I had no idea it was such a gift at the time, but it was. I was doing a gig during college working for this little magazine that was a history magazine about the Civil War. So that kind of got me going with the history bug right there.
Okay.
And one of the guys who was an editor there said, "Hey, you know, I heard you were studying photography at school. I'm going to be doing a book with a buddy of mine about another 6 or 8 months. Would you be interested?" I said, "Sure, you know, that's perfect. I'll be graduating and I'll be, you know, out in the world." He said, "So great, let's do that." So I did. It was a book about the history of Civil War relic collectors. Not about the war itself, but about people who collect relics.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was a really interesting project. So we traveled all up and down. We went down to Georgia. We met Beverly DeBow, who's Beverly DeBow is a man, not a woman. Very Southern thing, you know, having a name like Beverly for a man.
Yeah.
And Beverly DeBow was the heir of the Coke fortune. And he lived on a cliff overlooking the Chattahoochee River there in Atlanta. And it was literally, going to his place was literally like going into Terra in Gone with the Wind. You drive up this mile-long drive with the Spanish moss on either side of the road, and then it opens up into this huge vista. And his mansion, of course, it was a mansion, was right on the edge of the cliff with, you know, the white columns and so forth.
Yeah.
This dude had built a private museum on his grounds of, you know, hundreds of acres of grounds, and it was a museum that rivaled anything that you would see in the public museum world. So meeting people like that was just such a hoot and really a great education for me. All right,
all filled with relics, Civil War relics.
Yeah.
Wow.
You know, like that guy in particular, he had, for example, he had the sword of Stonewall Jackson. Now that should have been in a public museum, but you know,
wow, that's crazy.
He's the Coke heir, so he can name his price.
Yeah.
It's not a bad gig.
Not a bad gig. Not a bad gig. But we met
Check his fridge for Pepsis.
There you go. There you go.
Hey, man, we don't need any scandal in this thing. Man.
Don't ever mention Pepsi on that. Yeah, that's right. Don't mention Pepsi on that turf.
Yeah.
But
that's funny.
Yeah, so anyway, I finished that project, and I didn't want to work with those two guys anymore. They stiffed me on a couple of things, so there was bad blood there. So at that point, I thought, okay, I'm on my way. I've got a book under my belt, and I had a little company in D.C. that was starting up a stock photo agency. A stock photo agency is like Getty Images today. It's a big business today, but it wasn't 40 years ago. Back then, it was like considered leftovers. Whereas if you need an image from Getty today, it ain't leftover. They've created it, you know, with specific marketing in mind.
Right.
But anyway, back then that's how it was viewed, and so it wasn't really a well-respected kind of a gig in the photo business. But this little company in DC was opening wanted to open a branch in New York. So, you know, I was young and ambitious, and they said, okay, you'll be our guy to open the branch in New York, but you're going to have to work out of your studio. So that's how it went for the first. But then I started pitching this other place, which was it turned out to be a rival. And they said, you know, we like how you present yourself. Why don't you come work for us? And so I jumped ship within about 3 months of being up there. And
who are you selling images to before the internet? Like, is it like magazines that need stuff to like make ads, or who? Like that's interesting.
It's both editorial and advertising.
Okay.
Typically what happens with these stock photo agencies is they specialize. Now, Getty is large enough that they have it all. But prior to Getty eating up everybody and consolidating, you'd go to one if you needed textbook images. There was another house that specialized in corporate images. There was another one that specialized in advertising. So they all
thought about how those get in those magazines. You figure they just take the picture for what they need for that ad or something.
Well, they do if they need to photograph a product or a person. But for example, I used to do a lot of work with corporate clients. And if you're a bank and you want to talk about how you're underwriting the space shuttle, you know, as a bank, you don't necessarily want to send a photographer to go photograph a space shuttle. It might not be launching in time for your deadlines for your annual report.
Yeah, I never thought
that's a perfect example of where you would pick up an existing image.
All right. Interesting.
Or sometimes you'd have corporations that would be, usually it was financial people, you know, like if they're underwriting an offshore oil rig and they don't necessarily want to send somebody out to a rig, Well, you can just pick up an existing rig from somebody else.
Right.
Gotcha.
Images must have been pretty expensive back then, probably. By comparison to today, at least.
Yes, because there were fewer of them.
Yeah.
Getty has just flooded the market. If you need a picture of the Statue of Liberty, there are 10 billion of them out there.
Right.
And any one of them isn't worth very much.
Right.
But the agency that I worked with, one of our photographers had developed this pole that he was able to duct tape his camera to the end of, and then he had a cable that ran down the pole to his hand. And so he, just like we have selfie sticks.
Yeah.
It's basically the original selfie stick, but it was like a really long pole. It was like a 15-foot long pole. So he got up, he had connections with somebody in New York City to get up into the torch of the Statue of Liberty, which you cannot do if you're a regular person. But anyway, he got up there, put his selfie stick way out, and got the most unbelievable photo. You'd have to be like on a helicopter and be 20 feet away to get a comparable. And so he was able to name his price. But if it's just you and I, with our regular camera taking a picture of the Statue of Liberty, no, that wouldn't have been very expensive. So part of it was how rare is the shot? How quickly do I need it? If I need it FedEx to me tomorrow and you're the guy I stumbled on, well, okay, fuck it, I'll pay what you ask.
Wow.
But if I've got 3 months to find a shot, then I'll dicker back and forth and negotiate.
Wow. So there's probably a lot of freelancers doing that back then.
There were then, because
now,
the complete stock library, it's Getty at the high end and free stuff royalty free at the low end.
Right.
So it just knocked the legs out of anybody who's not in that top 10% of photographers.
Yeah, that's me and Shane. We're the low end. Free images. Actually, I think we do. I have a Getty account. I don't know if you do, Shane, but yeah,
I've used it before for sure.
Yeah.
I'm familiar with it. iStock, Storyblocks, or something like that.
Yeah.
All right.
Exactly. But it's all automated now. Back in the day, you had to call up, you had to talk to a sales rep, and they would send you a Chrome.
Yeah. Yeah.
Today you go online, you say, I want this, I want this, I want this. Here's my credit card, done. And they download a JPEG and you're done.
Yeah. That's like Corky Miller when she needed a groundhog. She had to go in a Rolodex and call everybody she knew that could possibly have a groundhog that she could train. Yeah, that's right.
So it's all automated. So, in that effect, my job was eliminated by the internet.
Right.
Yeah.
But
does AI, like nowadays, is AI like changing it yet again? Because technically some of that stuff, you don't even have to have taken the picture. You can just create the image. I mean, I don't even know how close that is in your world, but
it's very close. Actually, my third book, I used AI to create some images. I had an article about this couple that was the very last couple to vacate the area that the U.S. government wanted to build an airport on here in Delaware. And it was World War II. And, they basically said, okay, we're going to pay you X for your land. And it's not even a take it or leave it. We're coming in, the bulldozers will be there tomorrow. Well, this one couple said, hey, our people are buried here. We've been here for 7 generations.
Right.
Where are we going to go? We're farmers. And so they held out. Well, the government didn't care. They had a contract to build an airport. So anyway, this couple was standing in their field while the bulldozers knocked their house over. And the government handed them a check and said, see you later.
Wow.
Oh, my God.
Anyway, so it's a great story, but I couldn't find any photos of this couple. So that's where I had AI create an illustration for me of this couple tearfully hugging each other with a bulldozer pushing the house over.
Wow.
It's a great image,
right?
But it's an AI image. Well, I think authors today have to own up to the fact that they're using AI. I put a credit line on there that said this. Artificial AI image generated by DALL-E, which is the program.
All right.
I think you have to be legit. You can't pretend that, that's a photo I took. No, it's not.
Right.
Well, the ethical people, at least, right?
Yeah. I mean, there are plenty of people that are not ethical using AI, of course.
Yeah,
I mean, we hear this all the time from college professors or high school teachers complaining about how kids will use ChatGPT to crank out their essay.
Right.
And the teachers all know it. The phrasing on these AI programs is so predictable. It's like, as we delve into the pivotal moves that created significant moments in American history. And I was like, oh yeah, delve, significant, pivotal.
Yeah.
They use the same phrases over and over and over again. So a good teacher will be like, yep, that's AI.
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, I hear you. That's like the photos you see now. I think everybody, when I'm online, I see they look at the hands. They say, "Oh yeah, like the hands, like AI can't get the hand right or something."
It's
so
got 6 fingers or something.
Yeah, some crazy thing like that. Yeah.
And that will change as time goes by, but right now it's still pretty coarse.
So was it the internet that canceled out that career of the photo like selling like stock photos, but actual photos?
So it canceled out that career, but I left before that career disappeared. So I went to a company called American Showcase, which produced directories of illustrators and photographers. So it was kind of like visual yellow pages.
Right.
So I was an ad sales rep for them. And they started out with this giant book. It really was like a phone book. I mean, it was like a 1,000-page book. And it was the leader in the industry. So it was a lot of fun to work with because I was working with all the top people, and they knew they had to be there. Well, the internet killed that industry also, because why would I get a book when I can just go online and find it that way?
Yeah.
Right.
I can put in a search phrase and find exactly what I want instead of plowing through 1,000 pages and putting little yellow sticky tabs.
Mm-hmm.
So what happened there in the 90s, the sales staff on that company, on the book part of that company, was about 6 or 8 people. And they were making shitloads of money in the 90s. And along came AOL, and we all remember that horrible sound as you're logging on, that crazy thing. And, everybody laughed because they're like, oh, the internet, it sucks. It's never going to replace the books.
Oh, yeah.
Never say never when you're talking technology. Don't ever say never.
No doubt.
So my company came to me and they said, look, or actually we had a meeting with all the salespeople. They said, look, we feel that we're going to have to develop a web presence, and we're not quite sure how this is going to play out yet. It'll be a great adjacent product to our existing flagship product, but we can't afford to pay you the kind of commissions that we can pay you on the book, because we can't really charge very much money for people who want to show their work online because it's not proven. So I volunteered to sell that, knowing that I would take a hit, because I felt really strongly that, this is going to go somewhere. It's kind of like where the automobile was in 1905. It's like, it's doing something with the horses, and it might stick around, it might replace horses, but I'm not sure. That was kind of the attitude in the 90s. Well, obviously, we know what happened. And in fact, by 2003, the book stopped publishing because the internet site took off. So by then I was the guy that was making the money on the website. And when I retired in 2010, I retired very handsomely at 55 because I'd worked on the website. But, in the mid 90s, it was a scary thing. Edie was like, my wife was like, oh my God, you're taking a cut on your commissions? Why? Why would you do that? I was like, I don't know. I think this thing is going to take off.
Yeah.
Good intuition.
But wait, but what about this? But what about that? Yeah.
Yep.
Wild.
And,
we could stop right there. You had me retire at 55, right? Man, how good is that? But yeah, that's awesome. So
what happens when you leave the workforce at that age is you're still full of energy, and you're like, okay, what do I do next? I didn't right away start writing books. That's a more recent thing. So when I retired in 2010, Facebook was still respectable. I don't think it is anymore. I think it's kind of lost its luster.
Yeah.
Zuckerberg has made a lot of, he's stuffed it full of advertising, and people, it wasn't, back then it wasn't so nasty with the political postings.
There goes Zuckerberg is one of our guests, but okay.
Yeah.
Guess we won't get
tomorrow too. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, damn. Don't let him see this. Yeah.
But so anyway, I was there was a book, a website on Facebook called Appalachian Americans. Well, my dad's from West Virginia, so I was really interested in that. The guy that was running it as a goof. He had a full-time gig, and this was just kind of something he did. So he said, "Do you want to be the head moderator on this thing?" I said, "Sure, why not?" Well, that group started out with about 100 people, and it just seemed like, a little circle of friends. But I really saw the possibility of building into something, and I really wanted it to become much more than it was. So I started doing a lot of writing and photography for that Facebook group. Well, by the time I left it, which was, let me think, that would have been about 2020. So I was there for about 10 years. I started with a couple hundred people. When I left, it was about 250,000.
Wow.
And
Wow. That's
that
crazy.
group is now. So what happens is you get momentum. There were lots of other little groups that spoke to Appalachian American people, but they only had 10 or 15 people and nobody was really driving it. And so those all kind of fell by the wayside. That group is still the largest. It's like, what's the term for Microsoft? First in advantage.
Yeah.
Like if you build to the big guy first, nobody else can touch you. Well, that group now has about 700,000 members, and they're just, it's the de facto go-to.
Appalachian history.
Yeah.
That's crazy. 700,000.
Well, no, it wasn't all history. I mean,
Appalachian. Oh, go
Americans. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, my posts were historical posts, but, I left it wide open. Hey, if you want to show pictures of your travels, or, here's my baby, or here's a dish that I made.
Wow.
I left it wide open, but we really clamped down pretty hard on the political postings because that just trashes a site. People get on there of whatever extreme. It doesn't matter, left or right. They just trash.
Yeah. I mean, when you say Appalachia today, I have questions about, certain people, and I just am keeping those inside or comments about certain public figures who may have some inside knowledge of Appalachian. Yes, we'll stop right there.
We'll stop right there because this is not a political post or not a political podcast.
Yeah.
There's not much of Appalachian left after the other day.
Right now, yeah, they got wiped out up there. Holy shit.
Asheville really got its ass handed to it. And, a lot of people in Asheville thought, oh, we're safe from climate change because we're way the hell up in the mountains.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, you are, but you're not safe from torrential rain. And, of course, Atlanta got the same problem.
Yeah.
So, but anyways, I left that post, or that position, if you will, in 2020. And at that point, I was kind of thinking, all right, what's next? And that's kind of where the book things started to really come out. I'd been writing for that group for 10 years, so I was very familiar with writing for history, and I was trained as a journalist, so I know how to write professionally. And that's kind of when I started thinking, here I'm in Delaware. There's some really cool stuff here, and I wasn't seeing Delaware media treated the way I would treat it. And what I mean by that is near where I live, there's a little 8-room schoolhouse. It's a really historic little schoolhouse. It's an odd idea having a schoolhouse that's 8-sided, but that was a fad in the 1850s nationwide, octagonal rooms and octagonal buildings. And that little schoolhouse is a holdover from that era. And almost nobody knows about it because it's not really played up very well publicly here in Delaware, that schoolhouse. But it's the only one left in the state, and it's one of the few in the country. So it's a really important historical building.
But it's not operating as a school, is it?
No, it's not.
Okay, it's like a historical building.
Yeah, it's owned by the state, but it's tucked way off the road, adjacent to a private property. So if you want to visit it, you think you're going in this guy's driveway, and you just pass the house, and then it's tucked way off to the side. So it's not really well promoted at all. And I thought, well, that would be a cool thing to both to photograph because it's an interesting looking building, and also to write a little article about it. And so I approached Delaware Today magazine, and they occasionally do historical articles, but they're kind of more like, here's the cool new restaurant in Wilmington, and here's the latest thing going on down at Rehoboth Beach. They're not really oriented to the historical world. But I pitched them on the idea of, I'd like to do an article on the 10 most unusual historical places in Kent County. But then I kept doing more research, and I thought, well, why stop at Kent County and why stop at a magazine? I can just do my own thing. If you go back 10 years, the idea of self-publishing was looked down on. It was really like, what a loser. You can't find a publisher, so you had to, print it up yourself. I think those prejudices have really fallen by the wayside. So a lot of authors are just saying, fuck it, I'm going to take it into my own hands. I'm going to, design what I want to design. I'm going to market it the way I want to market it. A lot of I've read articles from a lot of authors who are with big publishers, and they often will say, well, yeah, I'm with, HarperCollins, which is a big publisher, but they don't promote my book because they're busy promoting so-and-so's book over. You know, Stephen King is with them too, and he gets all the dollars for promotion.
Sounds a lot like the music business, actually, right?
Very much, yeah. I mean, there's this idea that, oh, if only I had a publisher, my troubles would be over. Not true at all. And I think, in fact, when you have a niche area like I do, I mean, not everybody in the world is going to be interested in Delaware history for sure. But, you know, with a niche area, I know that I can pitch the libraries here in the state, the schools, I do a lot of speaking at historical societies, and they always buy books. So there's an audience for it. It's not, you know, I'm never going to rival Harry Potter or Stephen King, but I found my audience, and that's a cool thing. That's a really exciting thing.
Yeah, for sure. So you have what made you start with, like, did you always have an idea when you because I mean, of course we know each other, so I know you were always here, there, and everywhere, taking photos of this, taking photos of that, visiting historical places and everything.
Right.
Was that always with the idea that I think I'm going to write a book about this, or did you one day say I'm going to self-publish a book? Like,
no, it evolves. Like I said, originally I was thinking only in terms of an article for Delaware Today magazine. So I was thinking very small, you know, small frame initially. But
did you get the article?
No, they said no.
They said
weren't
no. All right.
You know, and in retrospect, that's fine because it's not really my audience.
Right.
It's not my audience. It's a lifestyle magazine. You know, it's like Cosmopolitan. I mean, why would Cosmopolitan run history articles?
Yeah, true.
So it kind of evolves. You know, I think in terms of my overall career, what has really helped me over, you know, 40 or 50 years is staying open to change and staying curious. I feel like people who have those two things are always going to land on their feet. Going back to my experience with the stock photo agency in New York, I remember at one point, 800 numbers were a new thing, and this would have been like the mid 80s. 800 numbers were a new thing. Well, businesses, of course, paid for them. They weren't free. They were free to the users of the 800 number, but businesses paid for them. And so I went to my boss at that time. This would have been about 86 or so. And I said, damn, we should get an 800 number. And he looked at me like, why? We have to pay for that extra. We've already got our 212 number. I'm like, yeah, but don't you want people in California to call you? They might not want to spend the money for the 212. And his attitude was like, no, it's business to business. You know, they write it off as an expense. But of course, businesses like anybody else are like, hey, call the 800 number. That's, you know, that'll save us a nickel. So, you know, so of course, after a while, everybody had the 800 numbers, but it wasn't like that at the beginning.
Yeah, for sure. They're hard to get now. I mean, I've had the same one for 25 years, actually, and I keep paying for it. And but yeah, you hold on to it like it's a piece of gold, because if you give it up, someone's going to snatch it right up from you.
Yep.
Yeah. Now you have to get 888, 866, all those other things.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It's pretty funny. Yeah.
You know, and same thing with website endings. You know, originally I set up an AppalachianHistory.net, and I was disappointed because somebody else had .com already. And in that era, you know, .com was, so this would have been about mid 2000s. And in the mid 2000s, if you wanted to be reputable, you had to have .com. And somebody else had it. It was a little bookstore down in, speaking of Asheville, it was in Asheville. But in retrospect, it's good that I got the .net, because .net is considered something that's, you know, educational. It's not non-commercial, non-profit. And that's in fact what my website, Appalachian History, is. So I'm actually better served having the .net than the .com. But, you know, you have to be willing to change. You have to be willing to pivot as needed.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So what was the first one? The first one is like Delaware before the railroads. Is that it?
That's the correct. Yeah, that's the correct title.
Yeah. And how long did that one take to put together?
Not very long. I've been photographing for years around Delaware.
Okay.
I moved here in 2010, and I didn't start working on that book until 2022. So I had 12 years worth of Delaware photography built up.
All right.
So that didn't take long to put together at all. Really, what took me the longest was just to decide to scrap the idea of approaching a magazine and just do a book.
Do a book.
Yeah. That was the big leap. It's like, oh shit, if I self-publish, am I going to be able to, is anybody going to take it seriously?
Yeah.
That's when I
Right.
realized, the self-publishing business has shifted. It really has changed.
But people won't read it. But what if this? But what if that? Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Lots of butts in that one.
And you have no publisher, you have no agent, you have anything. So all of the submissions that you do and everything else to get, like, because I know that, like, okay, so tell me the 3 that you've written. Do you have them with you? You can show them in your camera.
Hang on.
All right. Yeah, man. I mean, it's just like the music business, Shane. It's like, you have to self-promote.
Yep. I was just talking with somebody this morning that wants to do something with Joko, and it was like,
all right,
it is
there's
so not the same.
This is the
first one. Yeah. Delaware before the railroads.
Right.
All right. And we have 1 million people in Delaware, 3 counties. That's for those of you who don't even know where Delaware is. That is what we got here. When I tell people when I'm traveling or whatever, I live in Delaware. Delaware, I go, yep, I'm the one. I'm the one that lives there. Yeah. Dave lives here though, so yeah. So the first one was just a matter of, I need to do it. You needed to learn probably self-publishing. Correct. You needed to learn layout. You needed to learn a lot of things, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
The fact that I worked as an agent in New York helped me a lot because I know marketing. It takes about $30,000 to $40,000 per book to promote them properly. I mean, it's always kind of shocking to new authors because they're like, "Well, I should just be able to write it and put it out on Amazon and people will find it." Well, they don't. Amazon has everything. Nobody's going to find you on Amazon unless you point them to Amazon. And the way you point them is to get good reviews. Well, if you want to be reviewed by the top places, there's money involved. Palms have to be not greased, but they understand the value of having a good review from the New York Times, for example. So you have to
pay to play. Almost.
Pay to play. It's pay to play for sure.
Pay to play. All right.
Wow.
So you have to have good reviews. You have to enter book contests. If you get a gold award if you get a Pulitzer Prize, for example, people are like, "Whoa, wait a minute, what? I better read this. This dude has a Pulitzer Prize."
Yeah, of course.
I wish I could say that I had a Pulitzer Prize, but I entered the Pulitzer Prizes.
Yeah, you do. There must be entry fees and everything involved in that,
There's
right?
entry fees, yeah. The Pulitzer Prize, funnily enough, is only $75 to rent. But here's something interesting. You cannot say in your advertising that you have entered the Pulitzer Prizes. You can't say that.
Like you can't use the name or the brand.
You can't use the name because they know that people will think, you'll like tweak it so that it sounds like you won a Pulitzer Prize when in fact you just entered.
In the dog training business, you can take classes online from Harvard about dog behavior,
right?
And then you look at these people's website and they say Harvard educated, Harvard educated, Harvard trained, Harvard educated, exactly. So it's the same thing. Yeah, interesting. So you, because I know when we talk, you say like you're spending a lot of time doing these submissions and doing. You do a lot of. What kind of podcasts do you do when you do them? Besides this is a general, so how did I get here?
So the kind that are really beneficial for me are Delaware-based ones. I've done podcasts with WDEL, which is one of the radio stations out of Wilmington. Delaware Public Media is a really good one. They actually have a history show that I was on earlier this summer, and that was perfect for me because that's my audience. There's one called 302 Podcast. That's kind of a general lifestyle for Delaware. That was okay.
Down and look at them.
302 Podcast, yeah.
Okay.
I've been on a couple of podcasts that weren't history specific. I talk about my near-death experience on a lot of podcasts. And the reason that's important, that's a good but-for tie-in.
Yeah.
I had a near-death experience when I had cancer in 2019. And having that kind of experience really makes you refocus your life. It's like, okay, I almost hit the end there. Did I do everything I wanted to do? And you come away from it being really humbled It's like we don't all have endless amounts of time in this world. So, okay.
Yeah, true.
If I was to die tomorrow, what regrets would I have? What things would I feel were left unfinished?
Yeah.
So I tied up a few loose ends in my personal life, but I also, the book thing at that point in my life was something that's like, damn it, if I didn't do a book by now, I'd really regret that. And that's really what got me to knuckle down and focus on, all right, what are the steps I need to take? What specifically do I need to do to take all these photos that I've been gathering all these years and get it together in a book?
Right. Have you?
How many photos do you think you have from that time?
Thousands. Photographers, especially with digital, you can shoot 100 photographs and use just one of them. I think I've talked to a lot of photographers who are real fans of old school film. And I'm like, why would you do that? And they said, because it disciplines you. If you have a roll of 36 images, you're not just going to go click, 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 click. You're going to think, okay, I've got 6 shots left. What's the best way to frame this shot? Is the light right?
Right.
Frame it correctly. You're going to think a lot more carefully. Whereas when you're digital, you just, it's like machine gun. Okay, something will work. But it doesn't always.
Right.
What about the organizing of it? Must actually be a pain in the ass, right?
No, it's
not a pain, but you got to be organized.
You got to be organized. So the way it's much easier for me organizing digital imagery than it ever was organizing analog, because you have keywords. I want to show me all the images in my portfolio of 8-room schoolhouses. Oh, okay, there are 6 of them.
Wow. Right? But you still have to do that work. How about Shane as a musician, man? Well, I don't know. Some musicians, I can't imagine Shane. Shane is like fly by the seat of your pants, like me. Do you have like, I have this riff, I have that riff, I recorded it, I wrote it down, I did this, and then you're thinking, man, something would be cool right here, and then you go back into your like quote unquote library, or you
just where the hell's that riff?
Yeah, all up here.
Yeah.
It's either stored up here somewhere or off the cuff.
Yeah, crazy. Yeah.
Well, so what I found with organizing my digital imagery was that you have to keyword right away. I mean, as soon as you download that particular batch, you keyword it and you're done.
Wow.
Because the idea of going back with 10,000 images and just sitting there for weeks and weeks and keywording, nobody's going to do that. I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
But, if I've got 6 images that I just shot yesterday that I'm excited about, I'm like, yeah, I'm going to want to find these later. It's easy, And also with AI, you can upload an image to AI and say, look at this image and suggest 10 keywords. Boom, there they are.
For sure.
So GPT can do that. Can do that. Gemini can do that. All of the new ones can do that. You just upload an image and say keyword this. So wow, what a pleasure that is. What a joy that is.
So did you have the idea to write a series of them, or did you start with one and say, hey, this is pretty cool, I'm going to keep rolling?
Yeah, that's exactly it. I started with the one. Well, this gets back to what I said earlier about staying curious and being open to change. I didn't think of it as a series at first, but then I thought, okay, well, this first one I covered up until the railroads. Well, why not continue? Why stop there? And so the second book is Delaware from Railways to Freeways. And by the second book, I knew, okay, this is going to need to be a series. And then the third book is and that's coming out this week, actually, on Friday.
There we go.
Delaware from freeways to e-ways, e-ways.
Right.
And I have 2 editors that I work with, and I wasn't sure about the e-ways idea because it's a made-up word, obviously. But I ran it by both of them, and they immediately like, oh, yeah, of course, electronic.
Yeah.
There was this whole era in the aughts where everything was, e-commerce, eBay, e-this, e-that.
E-dogs.
E-dogs, yeah.
I still have that domain. edogs.com.
Right.
It points to my company now. Yeah.
Right. So, when I ran that by the editors, they were like, yeah, we understand what you mean by e-ways. Totally.
All right. And you spend but you're spending a lot of time on the promotion, on the submissions, on all that other stuff to just keep it going, keep it out there, keep it. Yeah.
It's a job. When I say I'm retired, I'm really not. I mean, I redeployed. It's kind of like the military. I was doing job A and then I redeployed to book writing.
Reinvention. Reinvention. Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's a theme in our thing. So,
we've had a few people on that have done that.
What about people? Have you helped anybody yet? Like, has anybody or do people come to you and go like, how did you do that? I have an idea. Everybody's like, I have an idea for a book. I have an idea for this. I have an idea for that. I have an idea for a podcast. We just did it. We just, Shane and I did it in a day. Get the software, start rolling. Here you sit, 18 later. You can kind of tell. We're learning as we go.
So when I do speaking at libraries or schools or whatever, a lot of people do come up to me and say, oh my God, I should write a book. And I tell them how much work is involved. You can't just sit around and wait for the muse to strike. You have to sit down, even if you feel like shit, sit down and begin.
Right.
And so, I'm really disciplined. My day I get up at 5 and I write for about 2 hours before I eat breakfast. And that 2 hours of the day, I don't have to deal with email or phone or anything. I can just really focus on my writing. I usually write a lot more than 2 hours a day, but that's like absolute. Like, if I have some days if I have a doctor appointment or if I have to go shopping or if I have to go travel somewhere, I might only get those 2 hours and nothing else. Other days I might write for 6 hours.
Yeah.
But those 2 hours are absolute, that's a must.
For sure.
What's for those 2 hours though? What's your process like? Because I know you are you typing? Are you actually physically writing? Are you just thinking out loud? Like because I know the muse does show up, but you also have to poke it. So
you do have to.
Are you just riffing until something hits, or
not riffing?
Okay.
This is where the AI software comes in really handy. So the first step is research. There's a great site I use a lot called newspapers.com, which is old newspapers going back to mid-1800s.
Yeah,
fantastic. Yeah. And there's a lot of weird stuff that has just gone by the way. I mean, you guys know this. You're old enough to look back 30 or 40 years and go, wow, that's not done anymore. I bet if I've told Gen Z about X, they look at me like, are you crazy? Dial phones? What are those?
What isn't, or stuff that isn't even published anymore. They don't I remember kind of a side story and weird, but I was at a flea market in Berkeley, California, and this guy just had a pile of shit. And in this pile of shit was a scrapbook, this thick, big, giant scrapbook. The whole scrapbook was full of newspaper articles about suicides. Like people, like all these crazy. I was like, I bought it. I was like, this is the craziest thing I've ever seen, and it was wild. But now they don't publish anything like that, right? Anymore. It's crazy.
On that note, even the ways that people commit suicide are different today. You go back into the 1800s, and a lot of people took arsenic. I don't think people do that anymore. It's like, why would you? Slow and painful. Why?
Don't you is it arsenic? Can't you just buy that at the bar now? Is it arsenic that they sell? Nah, it can't be.
No, it's not arsenic.
It's something.
It's a liquor, yeah.
Oh, I'm thinking of something else. Yeah,
it's a liquor, yeah.
That's gotta be a painful,
not a good way,
long way to go.
Arsenic is the worst. So if you're going to kill yourself, that's not the way to go. But anyway, so the point being simply that history is like a foreign country. You look at things and you just go, wow, they actually did that way. So that site, that newspapers.com site, has been really helpful for me in finding oddball stuff.
Right.
Gotcha.
Let's see. I'm working on a book right now called Delaware at Christmas. And this book was at
That's what I was going to ask. Yeah.
Yeah. So this book was at the suggestion of a bookstore in Wilmington that sells really well for me. And they were like, can you please do a book about Christmas in Delaware? They said people come in here from Thanksgiving through to Christmas every single year. And they say, do you have any books on Christmas in Delaware? And she says, we don't. Nobody's done that. So I was like, holy shit, that's a great idea. All right. So when I started researching it, this is what gets me excited. Shane, this goes back to your point about what's your process. Okay. So one of the first things I came up with was here in Dover, where I live, there was a company that was the town employer for decades. It was called Richardson and Robbins. And they were one of the very first canning companies in the country. And what they canned was figgy pudding, plum pudding, and chicken. They were bought out by Armour, Armour Products.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Armour, the Red Devil.
Yeah.
Okay. So
yeah.
They were bought out. They were bought out in the 60s. So people today in Dover have never heard of this company, but they were huge from about 1870 till about 1960. So for 90 years, they were the big, they were like the company employer in town.
Wow.
All
Which town? In Wilmington?
In Dover.
Oh, in Dover. Wow. All right.
They were huge, yeah.
Hmm.
And so, all right. So getting back to the Christmas book. So they made plum pudding. So you've heard the Christmas carol. Now bring us some figgy pudding. Now bring us some figgy pudding and bring it right here. And you're thinking, what the fuck is figgy pudding? Figgy pudding was...
My next question.
Figgy pudding was the precursor to plum pudding, which is the precursor to fruitcake. So we think of fruitcake as like, that's what you get when you don't know what else to get somebody.
Mm-hmm.
But fruitcake had a very good reputation.
Or if you don't like them.
Or if you don't like them. Here's a doorstop.
Yeah.
But fruitcake, if you go back a couple generations, fruitcake was a very honorable gift. Well, before that, the gift was plum pudding, which this company was the nation's #1 supplier of. And it was such a big deal.
In a can.
In a can, plum pudding in a can. Their product was such a big deal that plum pudding, which is a British product originally, their product was purchased by the monarchy in Great Britain. That's how good it was.
Oh, really? Wow.
So that's like selling snow to the Eskimos. It's like, well, you'd think that if they're in London and then they're the monarchy, they could get the best in the world. Well, this is where it was, from Dover, Delaware.
Dover. All right. Crazy. So is the Christmas book going to make it out this year? No. It's a next year.
That'll come
release.
out. I mean, I could rush it and make a shitty product, and I'm not going to do that because my name is on the front cover there.
I hear you. I hear you.
It takes a long time to really to do a good job with it. So I use AI to write my draft. But as I mentioned earlier in the podcast, AI is very predictable in what it will choose for words. Delving into something and significant, and everything is pivotal.
Mm-hmm.
You can very quickly tell when something has been written by AI. But it's great for putting a draft together, and then I'll take what it has written and make it in my voice. I still have to manually edit, but at least it gets something down on paper. I was going to say down on paper, but down on the screen.
Right. Well, we have there are some common threads here. Shane, what time do you get up every day? 5 a.m. What time am I up? Most days
5 a.m. club all day.
We don't. He and I are on our phones at 5:30 in the morning. We were today. Hey man, get me this. Send me that. I need this. I need that. What about this idea? What about that idea? That is. I mean, for a lot of people, it's the productive hour. Have you heard of the book? I'm sure, Dave, the 5 a.m. Club.
Of course. Yeah.
So it's, I mean, that book's all right, but I get that, but I get the concept. By this time of day, by the time we shut this down, I'm off and running, putting out 50 fires and everything else. So
it's mid-morning, there's lots going on.
Yeah. But by now I got 4 hours under my belt. Most people are just, having their first cup of coffee. So to me, it's worth it. Most days, if I'm out.
First one in, last one out.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
I've noticed that a lot of people who are, running their own game get up early. It's one thing if you're used to going in and working for somebody else, you're like, okay, I'll put in my 8 hours and I'm done. But once you start doing your own projects, you don't think that way anymore. I don't think about an 8-hour day. I think about today I have to get this done. If it takes me an hour, if it takes me 10 hours, this is what I need to get done today.
Well, for sure. I mean, people that are, I tell people that I bring on in business that have to start, they need to start their own business. I'm like, this is not a job anymore. This is your life, man. I mean, it's 24/7. People look at me and they're like, do you ever work? And I'm like, dude, I'm always working. Wow, you're in Portugal, you're here. Yeah, but you're working. To me, a vacation would be turn that shit off and not pay attention to it. And it's been since Kilimanjaro that I've ever been able to do that. And even then, I'm thinking about it. So
I was going to say, the wheels are always turning in your head about what next.
What's next
move?
Yeah, when they stop,
I love it.
That's when you got to worry about it, right? So, yeah. So what? When you? Well, I mean, I have to think that you have a lot of support. Probably not a lot of people when you say I'm going to write a book, I'm going to do this. People are like, yeah, but what? But who's going to read it, right? I'm sure you got that right. You probably had it yourself. I'll write a book, but who's going to read it?
Yeah. So on the first book, it was like that for sure. No one knows you. No one cares about you. On the second book, I got first place from the Delaware Press Association, which I was very pleased with because these are people who are professional writers. You can't bullshit them. You know, I can bullshit my aunt or my uncle, you know, like, here, buy my book. Come on, you'll like it. You'll like it.
Yeah.
But to get a gold medal from, you know, from other writers, that to me was just a huge honor. That's like the next thing down from a Pulitzer in my book, or, you know, my mind.
So your peers.
Yes.
Recognition by your peers. Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. You know, these people know what they're looking at. You know, they can tell if, oh yeah, you just cranked out something on GPT and called it a day.
Yeah.
So by this point, you know, I do have a circle of support. I have other writers that are like cheering me on. I have readers that are like, oh my God, I can't wait for your next book. I have bookstores that are like, come on, we need more product, you know, get with it. So yeah, but it, you know, going into it is a lonely process because you don't know if it's going to work or not.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's like starting a new business. It might fail utterly, or you might, you know, you might hit the moon. Moonshot.
So I think I know the answer to this, and we're going to like wind up here. But what advice would you give if when somebody comes to you and says, yeah, I want to write a book. How do I do it? What do I do? You know, I'm sure I know the answer, but what do you tell them?
So it's two things. You have to believe in yourself. That's
sure,
number one. If you don't believe in yourself, nobody else is going to believe in you. That's a fact.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to be disciplined. You can't, you know, we were talking about waiting for the muse or dealing with the muse. You can't wait around for the muse. You have to sit down and call out to the muse in a very loud voice.
Yeah.
That's number one. That's is self-discipline. You know, you have to have a writing schedule. You have to have a plan. You have to have a goal. You know, I'm going to get this out in 6 months or in 3 months or in a year, whatever your goal is, and then back up from there.
And you got to act, right?
You got to act.
You just do it. You just do it.
You can't just say, oh, tomorrow I'll start. No, you start today.
I mean, Dave, you've known me for a while now. How many crazy fucking businesses have I attempted? And how many have worked? 0, 1, but this one was working when we met, right? But yeah, so that's the thing. You gotta, but you know, without trying, you don't know if anything's gonna work.
That's right. You throw it on the wall and see what sticks.
Exactly.
And then the other thing I would tell budding writers is you have to develop your own circle. You can't assume that people, well, if I put out a great book, everyone will look at it and go, wow, what a great guy he is. That doesn't happen either. You have to reach out to other authors. You have to reach out to editors, agents. There's a whole circle of people that support authors, but you are the one that has to create your own network.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think that's very hard for people who are not self-starters. You know, if you've worked for an employer and you're kind of used to everything being set up for you, that's really hard to create it on your own, but that's what you have to do.
Yeah, it's not for everybody, and you know, you got to go out of your comfort zone, right? So
Yeah,
you say that the budding writers with a D or budding writers with a T? Like right? Yeah.
Butt writers.
So you have DaveTabler.com, is that right?
That's correct.
DaveTabler.com, and your books are on there. Can you buy them there?
There's a link. I sell mainly through Amazon and Barnes & Noble online.
Awesome.
But yeah, I mean, if somebody just Googles my name, all the links come up. So that's where the SEO portion of marketing really is important.
I mean, you got to wear a lot of hats, right?
Yeah,
for sure. We know that. Well, thanks, Dave. I really appreciate the time, of course, and
it was really nice meeting you.
Yeah, we'll knock this thing out. I have to. I don't think I put it in my email to you. Keep the app running for a few. This is like our standard sign off right now, but keep the app running. Keep the app running after I hit stop for a few moments. So in your little dashboard, it says upload 100%. So we don't get cut off, and because we've lost a few episodes that way. But,
okay.
Yeah. So I appreciate it, and we'll be in touch. Thanks, Dave.
Very good.
Good luck with everything.
Thank you, bud.
Good luck on the new book.
Thanks for having
me.
Yeah,
man. Yep. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you for listening to this edition of the Butt Fixer Podcast. Stay tuned for more guests, more stories, and more butt fixes. Make sure you click, like, subscribe, and follow at all of the places where you stream podcasts.